Hi, everyone. This is Miki Tsusaka, your Chief Alumni Officer and a Managing Director and Senior Partner in BCG Tokyo. Thank you for joining us for the second season of BCG Alumni Leaders. Today, I am absolutely thrilled to be joined by my good friend, Aliza Knox. Aliza graduated from BCG in 1999 as a Managing Director and Partner in the Asia Pacific region, and she has been a driving force in building our financial services practice and beyond. She has since held a number of leadership roles at Google, Twitter, Visa, and most recently Cloudflare. And sitting on several boards, we are very, very lucky to have Aliza back as a senior advisor in our Sydney office today. So with that, Aliza, maybe we can start with you first telling us how your career began at BCG.
Miki, thank you very much for having me on this program. I can talk a little bit about how my career began at BCG. It's a funny story. When I started, BCG was much smaller, so not as many people knew about it as today. And if I go back a little bit, I was working in New York at a bank, and I wanted to swim. The only way I could get into a swimming pool where I could swim laps was to get an MBA at night at NYU. If you weren't taking courses there, you couldn't get into the pool. When I finished, I thought, well, I've been at the bank for 5 years. I have an MBA. I should do something different. And on top of that, I had seen the movie Crocodile Dundee, which dates me, of course. And so I decided I really wanted to move to Australia. I'd always wanted to have an international adventure. I thought I eventually wanted to be in Asia, but I didn't have great language skills, and I thought Australia was close. So I applied for jobs, but I didn't know what to apply for. So someone told me, hey, you've got an MBA now, you can be a consultant. And then I applied to McKinsey and what was then Pappas Carter Evans and Koop, which became part of the Boston Consulting Group, I think in 1990. And so armed with a passport, some clothes, and not much else, I went off to what became BCG in 1987. And it was really for an adventure to be in Australia. But I ended up just loving the company and loving the job.
What a story. So, as someone now who focuses on leadership strategy and has written many articles in Forbes and other places, what are some of the challenges you faced as a leader over the years, Aliza?
Well, of course, as a leader, and I'm sure you have too, Miki, you've faced many challenges, but apropos of the current issues, I like to talk about taking the R out of remote, bringing people together across great distances and making them feel included and their needs heard. And although that was discussed in the pandemic as if it had never happened before, to be honest, I think all of us who are running parts of companies outside of headquarters, so people running Samsung in France, or Atlassian in the US, or in my case, Twitter in Asia, have had these challenges. And so the things I would recommend are to, one, over communicate. This can be done with town halls, company newsletters, intranets. Two, you really, as a leader, need to fight for resources that your teams need, probably more than others. And you need to make sure your team members get recognized and connect to other areas of the world. And I think the last thing is really being flexible, even more so now, and recognizing the human factor and helping teams set boundaries. It's pretty easy to work 24/7 right now. And you can see this from the fact that some companies in Europe are even legislating against email all hours of the day. So I think that's something a leader can do.
Great. Another thing I think leaders today are confronted with is this great challenge around the great resignation that several of companies around the world are facing, particularly in light of COVID. I wonder what leaders should be thinking about. What would your advice be about retention of that great talent that you all bring into our own companies?
Yeah, I think retention is the key, even more than hiring. I have been quoted as saying retention is the new black. So I think it's the book, Don't Quit Your Day Job, is written primarily from an employee perspective, but if you kind of reverse engineer it, there's lots of messages in there about what to do about the great resignation. So I think the things to combat it go beyond increased salaries, which we have heard a lot about. There's many studies which are saying that people are not only quitting for extra flexibility, but also for really feeling valued and recognized and having managers who care about them. And because employees have more leverage right now, they can do that and search for something that's more optimal. So again, I think the things to combat it are flexibility and boundary setting, removing incivility. There is a study from Portland State saying that people have become much ruder during the pandemic, perhaps because of burnout, perhaps because of the distance on Zoom. And I think the value of thank yous, for example, is underestimated. Third thing is good, solid feedback, which really shows you've invested in people. So I don't think that means just obsequious, nice feedback. I believe that Kim Scott in Radical Candor calls that ruinous empathy, but really feedback where you've given it a lot of thought. And I do know from people currently at BCG that that happens a lot at BCG, which is amazing. And it really demonstrates the managers and the companies are trying to develop the individuals. A fourth thing is job crafting, helping people reorganize the job around what they need. And I think the last thing is really continuing to make work fun and supportive, and whether that's having yoga or lunch in the office or doing some games together. I know it may sound twee, but I do think there's a lot of value in ensuring that employees get to enjoy themselves and associate some fun with work.
Well, you've already just mentioned it, but you did write this fabulous book, Don't Quit Your Day Job, where you deliver some great advice about achieving career success and finding personal and professional fulfillment, as you've just mentioned. I wonder, what surprised or challenged you the most about the book writing process? Because I know that it hasn't been your main job through your career, but there's so much, wisdom packed into this great piece of work. Maybe you can comment about that.
The most fun part was sifting through all the various examples over the years and choosing them. Probably the most tedious part was getting permission or not to share them. So it was a tough process. I'm not sure I'll ever do it again, but it was good to help me just clarify for myself.
Well, if you've talked about acceleration, maybe we pivot a bit to talk about diversity, which I know you're very passionate about. You've led these large companies in Asia Pacific and spoken on gender diversity as well through your career and on the boards that you've served. How can organizations accelerate their rate of progress towards their diversity goals and beyond? It's now diversity, equity, and inclusion. So, the concept of self is broadened, diversity itself is broadened. But I wonder what your advice might be as you think about this topic.
Never underestimate the value of role models. I think even if people can't articulate it, when I was running parts of a business or region, I usually had the highest percentage of women around a company. I, of course, am an active supporter and worked on that, but I also think there's an unspoken message when people can see a female leader. And that could be for any kind of diversity where people may see themselves reflected in the interviewing process and hence feel like they may be included and welcomed. I also think we need to be especially focused on inclusiveness in a hybrid world. For example, if everybody is remote, we use interactive tools to boost inclusivity, make meetings accessible, and maybe be sure to go around the room and ask for everyone's input. I think we need infrastructure that creates community, whether that's volunteer days, ERG groups with office hours, something to create togetherness. I do think there's something for office spaces that people want to come into. I believe there's still something around personal connection that we're going to need to build, especially in professions like consulting, um, legal, anything that has a bit of an apprenticeship model. And in a way, I think distance is a new form of diversity. Some people are going to be distant, some are not. And finally, I know this isn't necessarily a popular view, but I think sometimes quotas work and really help with diversity, or at least the threat of a quota. That tends to get the numbers up.
Final question, Aliza. What is the single best piece of the career advice that has driven your career to date?
A long time ago, I was working with Rick Boven, then a senior partner at BCG in New Zealand. And it was late at night. I was frustrated with someone at the client, and I said something to that effect. And Rick kindly reminded me that even if you're being dismissive in the middle of the night and it's not something you would say during the day, which he knew I wouldn't and mentioned that, just starting to think about clients or other people in a disrespectful way might come out somehow. And not only is it not nice and not pleasant, it's not good for work and it doesn't help you get things done. And he admonished me in a way that really made me think and remember over all these years how important it is to treat other people with respect, even when you're frustrated. And I think I've used that all the time, whether it's pre-selling to get an idea, whether it's collaborating across projects. And I think that, sorry, pre-selling to get an idea approved. I think that that's really helped me in my career. And I've got a whole chapter on the book in how connection trumps tech savvy, even in tech.
Great advice. Well, thank you, Aliza, for joining me today. It was a pleasure chatting with you, catching up with you, and we all look forward to grabbing a copy of Don't Quit Your Day Job. So thank you for joining me, and hope all of you will join me again on our next episode of BCG Alumni Leaders coming soon. Thank you.